you talked a little bit about our spirit team, and this I found very fascinating during my reading, asking you all the questions. So you say we have angels, we have our spirit guides, and we have our loved ones. If you could just describe how, I mean, I feel like this is a whole podcast unto itself, but
I know. I'm so excited.
it's just amazing. So I guess, especially in, United States Western culture, we have a specific idea of the Christian sense of angels. But if you could just describe what is an angel, what is a spirit guide, and I think loved ones may be self-explanatory, but if there's maybe some information of clarification or just kind of your interpretation of that and how they all support us and communicate. I don't know. So
I love this. I love this topic because no one ever because I never get to talk about it. So it's like when I'm doing a reading, it's just like do. It's just everything that's about you and your. So like sometimes I'm like, I'll tell you later. I'll tell you, and I never get to be able to tell people later. So I'm very excited to talk about this. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is all obviously from my perspective. There's going to be a lot of different people of how they see different things. So I just say, do you, if you feel like this is like angels are this way, that's it. That is your reality. That is right for you. So that's like really important to note. Okay. So I am not a religious person. I grew up, I guess we were like Presbyterian, like I guess because we love snacks. So I loved I love the coffee cake. I was like a really fan.
Yeah. What's not to like, right?
Exactly. So we did do like I was actually never baptized. There was a whole thing about that. So I was very excited that I wasn't baptized, even though like we kept on trying to get baptized and it was like really late by this point. Like every year we tried to and something stopped it. And for both my sister and myself and my cousin, but then she ended up getting baptized.
Quick question to interrupt you. Does getting baptized interrupt any kind of like your perception of receiving energy, or is that just a funny thing that just happened?
I love this. It's all our perception. So if we feel like it blocks us, then for yourself and rebaptize yourself in your own way, get in your tub, whatever it is. It doesn't, it's all our experience. So there's nothing, there's no rules and there's no thing that you have to do it a certain way. And I'm going to give like a very weird example about this. Somebody asked me, it sounds totally stretched, but somebody asked me the other day, well, how do you use smudge? I don't want it. I used to be in indigenous culture and they, smudge a certain way and you don't really touch it or do it any other way except what the shaman does or stuff like that. And I love that. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful to, I'm like, you're really lucky that you got to experience that. For me, and smudging, which is usually a bundle has sage and stuff like that in it. It's a purifier. It's a way to release, energies. I have a whole entire thing about that. But in general, she was within this community that had a custom that really is kind of the motherland of that of smudging itself. But burning of incense is long beyond in native cultures. So it also is of Egyptians or other cultures had especially Egyptians had the burning of incense, and it was the same premise, same thing. So my whole theory is that you take a belief, and you honestly, and this isn't like you don't own that belief. You let that belief be ownership of that culture, of that. You don't you take what works for you, don't copy it, you know what I'm saying, but use it in the way that is serving you. So I'm not ever going to speak, like I have a thing about on how to smudge on YouTube. It's a super old video. And a lot of people projected their opinions of like, oh, you should have been wearing a long skirt. Oh, you should have been doing this. Blah, blah, blah. You should not be using these feathers. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys, this was so personal. This was how I smudge, how I use it. It had those feathers that I use were super personal. They actually were gifted to me literally from the heavens, you know? So, and they had a specific meaning. So there's all these different reasons of why I showed it. And there was a lot, and it was so funny because I had a lot of negativity on this YouTube video. It was one of the first videos that I put out. And I was like, of course I have negativity because it's about smudging. It's about releasing, you know what I'm saying? So take those things of that we've been indoctrinated, or that the schooling, you know what I'm saying? And we unschool ourselves. We unlearn, but we use what we have learned by releasing the boundaries that have been placed on that learning, and be expansive with it and make it, alchemize it to ourselves. So we're making it in alignment with us. You know what I'm saying? What works for us. So I'm really not a fan of rules in that way. And I hope that like answers your question. I can't even remember what we were talking about.
Well, originally we were talking about angels,
yes.
our spirit guides and our loved ones, and how the roles they play, and how if they talk to us all in the same way, or if there's different, or if they, and then I have like a million other questions about them, so we'll just keep it rolling.
Okay. So, so let's start with, so if you do have a religious belief that you wanted to do, you know, with that, let's say with angels, specifically, you use it in the context, like I always say, don't, like people are like, oh, well, I get this a lot. Like, I can't see you, I'm Christian. And I was like, okay, like I have a whole thing about that. But the thing is that I'm very big in talking about this. You use what you already believe. You do not have to believe what I believe. I really, please do not believe what I believe. Use it to make it work for you in alignment with what you believe. So I have a lot of people, let's say specifically Catholic people, because they know I do angel work, but I don't know the angels. Like I just had somebody the other day. She's just like, oh, well, do you know this angel? I'm like, no. I was just like, I work with customized angelic realm, but I don't work with like the archangels that are like, oh, well, Archangel Michael is definitely doing this, and Archangel Raphael or whatever. I know people of that kind of stuff. I am not rule based. I do not fit in that realm. So use what works for you. There's three things that I always say for your spirit team. It's your angels, your spirit guides, and your loved ones. I'm going to start with the angels first. So angels to me, when I've met them energetically, and again, it's not like I'm like, hi, shaking their wing or something. Like I am literally, it's like in passing, like I'm all of a sudden walking somewhere and I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And I have these like interactions that just happen. That's just my life. You know, it doesn't mean that you should have that or anybody should have that. It doesn't make me more special. It just, that's how my life works. So in these interactions, what I did get, that angels are very much, they love, and they're using my words like I wanted to say other stuff and they're like, they love us enormously, more than honestly any human being can love. We only have a certain capacity to love being in the body. And that's purposeful. You can't, you know what I'm saying? Because you need to still have the ego. That's why you're here in the body. Okay. So angels don't have ego. They also don't have a body. If you ever notice the pictation or the drawings of them, they're never on the ground. You know what I'm saying? It's also the same like symbolism of when you, some cultures, especially like Tibetan kind of cultures or those cultures, they will never put a baby on the ground for at least a year. They do not put the baby's feet on the ground because they do not want to know, they're keeping their child, they're still in the angelic realm. So they don't want them so earth-based. I also think that symbolically they're saying, we don't know how long you're going to live because you've been, you know, somewhere else. And so it's like the way of being like, okay, if you do leave the body, so it's not so much trauma, you know, on being so body centered, that. So angels are so high of a frequency. It's like to me, that's why when I do my smudge, I always add rose petals. They are that high frequency. So it's like, if you hear crickets, if you hear, smell roses, any type of like, wow, that when you have a wow reaction, that's an angelic frequency. That's how I kind of view that. And so angels, when I say they love you so incredibly, they are also, rooting. They're like, I don't want to say they don't have jealousy or anything like that. But when I say envy, I mean it in the most loving way. They envy us that we have such enormous courage. And I might cry because this is like really emotional, because I could feel how like lovely they are and how much they love us, that we are doing this human experience. Because they can't. So they can't be in the body. So they are just so incredibly high frequency. That's all they want, is to be like, keep going. It's going to be okay. Keep going. Even though you're like, everything's shit, keep going, So it's also why I actually don't use them that much, because I feel like they don't understand. And I'm like, I have human problems. And they're like, it's okay. And I'm like, it's not okay. Like, good God. Like, and I'm like, I need a human solution, not an angelic one. And they're just like, no, it really is.
I like that. Yeah.
So, and angels are I call them in on the big stuff. On the stuff where I'm like, I'm already out of my body in maybe a negative way, but also a good way, like I'm so traumatized, let's say, that it's so big, the body can't even hold that,
Right.
But when the big stuff happens, that's when I'm really calling in the angels. That's when I call in like the big angels. And I even consider like the Jesuses, the Buddha, those to me are angelic. It's whatever saints, whatever well, not really saints, but those types of energies, really, really, really high frequency energies. And it's that the people have made those high frequency energies. They don't have this like, oh, well, guess what? I'm Angel Raphael.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're not up in heaven or wherever, like being like, what department are you in?
Right.
So that, even like, let's say the Jesus is, I keep on getting Jesus is, there's not one, how I'm hearing it. News to me. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But the Jesus is those energies, again, there's no hierarchy, but the people have created that as their salvation. And this is magically wonderful. Use it, do it, because it's tactile. It's something that we can use when we don't have anything to grasp onto physically. So we have that to go to in our mind. When your therapist will say, find a happy place, that's going to be the majority of your happy place, whatever that is. When I'm in crisis, I bring in people who I don't even believe in. You know what I'm saying? Like for instance, I'm not a practicing Buddhist, but I will definitely bring in all the Buddhas. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to bring in everything, because all it is energy. Right. All we are is energy. It's just how we're packaged, essentially. And so when I feel of angels, they are so of the identity and frequency of the word love as we understand it, and like so much more than that, but they come in very at that high frequency. So it really helps with trauma. It really helps with big things. It helps if you work with them on a daily basis. Great. That's who you're going to do. That's your spirit team. You know what I'm saying? Even like find their names, find ones. And the other thing is, a lot of times, like what I do is I will find their names. It'll be weird names. You know what I'm saying? And then, meaning intuitively, I give my client, I'm like, oh, I feel like Angel, da, da, da. I'm like, who's that? And it's like, I don't know. I'm like, neither do I. And then I ask, Google it, but don't get hung up on the name. It might have a twist of words. It might sound like da, da, da. So they sometimes get that validation of like, oh my God, I think, or sometimes I'll describe the angel, what it looks like, and then they find the angel, that looks similar to that. And then like, how
Wow.
funny, this angel meant dot, dot, dot. And I'm like, this is exactly what we were talking about. So again, it's just all alignment, and they're there. So they help in a very high frequency way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to spirit guides, from my understanding, is that, and literally I've met a spirit guide. He wasn't well, I guess he was mine because he showed up just for me, but
Yeah.
I wasn't like pals or something with him. He showed up. There was, some people call this an angel. I feel like earth angels and spirit guides are kind of the same thing, to be honest. If you show up in the physical, to me, you're a spirit guide, or because spirit guides have always somehow been earth relational. Okay. So they have some type of experience of being dense, whether they've been here at another time, whether they are just really, let's say, earth guides who are, or spirit guides that are very much tied to helping someone through addiction. That's a very dense matter. That's very in the body and earthly matter. They might be like, well, I help this person and this person and this person. Again, there's no such thing in time. So they're simultaneous. You could one spirit guide for all of us. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? But which isn't the case, but
okay.
that's a lot of work. Anyway,
yeah.
That kind of stuff. And so, for instance, I was in New Mexico, and this was, God, I was 19, maybe 20, 19 or 20, something like, no, I might have been 19. And I was kind of being like, I just moved to Colorado, and I was just like, woo, I have all the freedom. And I didn't know a soul, and I ended up having roommates, or I don't even know if I had roommates at the time. But anyhow, I just left, and I was like, I want to go to New Mexico. I want to just drive to New Mexico. I've always wanted to go. I've never been out west. And I was just like, blah, blah, blah. So I go to New Mexico, and I drove there, and it was night, and I ended up hitting a deer on the highway. And of course, I'm like, all my like independence just went totally out the window. And I'm like, I have no one to call. What's going to happen? And there's not cell phones. There's no, there was nothing. This was in between. I was on my way to Albuquerque, but far. There's no street lights. There was nothing. And I remember seeing this big truck, and he or she was swerving. And I was like, what's going on? And it's like, oh. And so I had my, Honda, and I hit this deer. I pull over my car. I'm hysterical because I killed something, and I don't know if it's killed. I don't know what's happening. All I remember is seeing its body and its butt hit the car, and it looked like a Santa Claus situation. Like it's just like a reindeer jumping over, but it got clipped because I pulled over the car, hysterically hysterical. I don't even know. I can't even explain it because I'm so afraid it's dead, and I can't find it at this point. So I'm out of the car. I'm like looking for it, but I see its body, but it's not moving. And so I didn't know what to do, but I think it was still moving. So I was just like, I can't even kill a spider. Like I am not good in that type of situation.
Yeah.
This is like, right, the birth of being a psychic medium. So then I was just like, all of a sudden I'm like just freaking out. I'm standing in front of my headlights in Nowhereville on a highway. There wasn't even cars. There was nobody except that truck. There's this guy, and he starts walking out of nowhere. This is 11:30 at night, by the way. He starts walking towards me on the side of the road. I'm like, do I have mace? Like, what is happening? Yeah. I'm like scared. I'm like, I can't deal with a deer and you know what I'm saying? Like pure fear. But I wasn't fearful. And that's what scared me even more. Cause I'm like, why am I so calm? Even though I'm super not calm, because I'm like freaking out that there's some strange guy that basically looks homeless. And which I totally have to redefine homeless anyhow. And he is coming towards me, and I am not afraid. And then where I feel like I should be afraid. And then I talked to him, and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, I just kind of turned into like a 19-year-old scared woman. And I was like, no, I'm not okay. And I'm normally not like that. I would be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, and I just like let it myself out. And I was like, I'm not okay. Nothing's okay. The deer could be dead. I don't know what to do. I don't want to look at my car. And I started like just focusing on my car, because I was like, okay, if I focus on something of getting mad about like my car being totaled in the front, can I even drive it out of here? I don't know how to get anywhere to safety, because I was supposed to go camping. I was like, I can't camp on the side of the road. It's a highway. So I didn't know what to do. And I was pure mania. He was super calm. And he's like, don't worry. He's like, I'm going to go check on the deer. He's like, you're okay. And I was like, what? And I was just like, can I go? And he's like, go. He's like, you're okay. He's like, I'm going to take care of the deer. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm crying at this point. And I don't know if I hugged him. I might have. I have no idea at this point. All I remember is getting in the car, driving, sobbing, crying. I couldn't even see. And I'm just trying to find like a hotel or something. I'm trying to find a payphone to call my friend who I lived with, to be like, at 11:30 at night, help me. I don't know how she's supposed to help.
Right.
And I remember, and then, so I left the whole thing. And I remember when I pulled away, I could not see him in my taillights. It's like, I couldn't see anything. I saw the road and where the deer was, but I did not see him. And I remember somebody told me, who does spiritual work, and this guy, he told me, he's like, you just met like an earth angel. And I was like, that's exactly what he was. And it was my first experience. And what I call him was honestly a spirit guide. I feel like he literally came down. He came down to help me process something that I couldn't process, and I, to this day, in my mind, or he might have been a homeless person, and that's it, he's still an earth angel.
Sure.
So yeah, that awokened me to understanding what spirit guides are. So I definitely work with spirit guides. There is ways, and you can learn that through my the original AI program that I'm going to be teaching, that kind of stuff, of where I teach you how to meet your spirit guides. I have one that I very specifically work with, and get engaged with them, because it's really important that those spirit guides, they have the experience of human problems, of human suffering, and they have not just compassion, but also the ways to be able to communicate and talk with us, not necessarily through our ears, but through our thoughts, because I always say intuition is the thought before the thinking. And so we're understanding, we're getting that intuition, that awakening our intuition, that connection, from our spirit guides, in understanding, of I'm safe, or it's being taken care of, or wow, look at you showing up right when I feel like nothing's showing up but fear, those kind of things. They're really good to work with pretty much anything. So if you are just stressing of, like, let's say I like here, like before I got here, and I was like, why isn't the internet working? And I went through this whole process of all my stuff. And even that, I'm calling on my spirit guides every single moment of the day. Now I just do it. It's in the back of my head. Like, it's just like it's a companionship. It's like my arm, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no difference. I'm not like being like, hey, arm, start working today and write something, it just is. And so what I'm doing is I'm activating of, okay, I'm in the element of what is, I'm letting this work with me. And the spirit guide is able to organize the energy of what is happening to be matching us. So it's like they almost help us change our energy field and the energy field. So the environment energy field and our energy field, so it becomes more cohesive, like that. And they're kind of like the medium. They're basically our medium. They're our continual medium. That's how I see them, of bridging that gap that we always separate ourselves from.
Right. Yeah, I found the question I posed to you is like, do they ever get tired of helping us?
Yeah.
Do they get worn out? Are they like, yo, like it's been
Right.
nonstop, could you
Right.
like, I got, exactly. Like figure
I
out
need
something on your own.
vacation package deal.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
You're a hot mess. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, I tried. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like,
Like, do they ever get fired, or like, do they ever quit?
right.
I want to
They
know.
resign. You're like, there's another spirit guide I think you'll be much happier with.
Right. I
Because I
thought,
think
oh,
this could
she's gonna.
also, like, especially if they've been someone who's had some earthly experience, that means they maybe have passed on, right? So like if I'm, and please correct me if I'm
No,
off,
keep
way
going.
off
Keep
base,
going.
but it's like, it's the interesting thing of is like, I've seen memes like, on the other side, am I gonna have a job? Am I gonna have to work at like the like spirit like post office? Like
Yeah.
it's the, so it's a yeah, I guess it's just,
Yeah. Like, how do you get the job of a spirit guide?
yeah, that's one of my questions is, do they choose us or do we choose them?
Oh, let me ask. Okay, hold on. I don't know.
I like that one.
Okay. Yeah. How do you become a spirit guide, and do they choose us or do we choose them? Oh, they just said both.
Huh.
So they said it's a contract, and they say they switch up. So yeah, okay, yes. So sorry, when I say yes or do, I'm like having two conversations,
Sure.
but they are saying that they keep on showing it's a contract. It's almost like we sign it like energetically, and they say that we come in at different times of your life. So we're not, you have more of a guardian, and they call that a guardian angel. A lot of people view it as a guardian kind of stands behind you, is like always with you your entire life. They actually don't interfere. They're more holding you up and helping you raise your vibration continually.
Yeah.
But a spirit guide, they keep on showing it as if they're kind of like, how you go through a whole bunch of different best friends through your life. That's
Yeah.
what it's kind of like. It's not necessarily a confidant. They're more like your co-parent, or
Mm.
like that, of helping you. They're like, the Boys and Girls Club, how they are always like have somebody who's just like, I'm just helping you because you're young. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I'm relating to you. That's what a spirit guide is. It's like a Boys and Girls Club, that kind of way.
Okay.
They don't have to be like that spirit guide was male, and I'm obviously female. It doesn't have to be like the same sex or anything like that. And sometimes they actually show themselves multiple, but that's actually more through angelic realm. Angelic realm
Hmm.
will show themselves sometimes no gender, and sometimes they will be more feminine, or they will, but spirit guides, they usually sometimes stay the same gender, but they change what they look like. So like,
Hmm.
for instance, my spirit guide that I work with, sometimes she would come in very Native American or Native North American, looking,
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
whatever that looks like. For me, what she showed was always long white hair and just like all these different components. But then other times she showed herself totally different, that I almost didn't recognize her.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, who are you? And I was like, oh, wait, that's my spirit guide, because I know her by name. So that kind of stuff. So they might change. And so sometimes you might think, but they are saying, but they're shaking their head right now. So they are saying that you do have multiple ones, and they do come in at different times in your life. Sometimes it's preparatory. Sometimes it's just through happy times. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's through trying times and challenges, especially death. That's a thing that they'll definitely come through
Mm-hmm.
sometimes prior, and then definitely through because the death is really kind of like a giant open door of being able to uh, funnel through, information. So what was your question again? So I stay on track.
Well, oh yeah. So, I think you answered it. Is, do they choose us or do we choose them?
Yeah,
And,
yeah, it's definitely both.
and then the follow-up question to that is, are these energies always humans, or can they be other, like, could you have an animal spirit guide?
Yes. They say they take on the animal energy. So
Hmm.
they're kind of joking right now. They're just like, oh, human questions, but they're
Yeah.
saying that they're showing it like a zip up. So like,
Oh yeah.
animals are humans. Humans are animals. It's just like our zipper suit. So they're
All
just
right.
kind of
Okay.
like, it's just the energy. There's not like, we're just dividing that because of, what we know
Right.
of like of that separation, but
Okay.
there's not a separation to them. So it's just kind of, because they're also saying,
Sure.
which is fascinating to me, I just heard this, is that they're saying that there's also animal spirit guides. So there's like animals have spirit guides, but they're just like, but we're kind of more riding their back, like as a fun time. That's what they're showing. They're not
Hmm.
showing it as, because animals don't have human suffering, problems, because they don't have the thought
Yeah.
process that a human does of
Yeah.
keeping it, a
Yeah.
problem. They just
Right.
have a problem and they get over it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we make a story of it. But they're saying that
Right.
they
We certainly
are
do.
more, yeah. So they're saying more that they're riding the animals back, of where it's just like, this is just fun to live through the
Yeah.
animals. They're living more as an experience through the animal. And they say that's
Mm.
what your animals, oh my gosh, I did not know this. They're saying that's what your animal is looking for. So when you say you see your animals like looking up at like, are you looking at a ghost, Charlie,
Yeah.
or whatever? And
Yeah.
you're and then you realize, oh my God, maybe they are looking at a ghost, but
Could be.
they're saying they're seeing us. That's what they're saying.
Mm.
Seeing us, and we're standing up. We're standing up really big, tall. But they do come as, they're showing it more in human form. And
Hmm.
I think that's just because of us
Sure.
asking the
Okay.
question. I feel like
Hmm.
as a spirit guide, they're showing it very, meaning a spirit guide to an animal, they're showing it more amoeba like they're just energy. They're not even
Hmm.
showing, they're just like literally showing themselves riding on the back of a dog. That's what I keep on seeing. Like, like they get to feel the
Right.
invigoration and life living itself, because dogs especially are really good
Right.
at doing that.
What about like animals with higher intelligence who maybe have big brains? So we're like talking like dolphins, orangutans, more complex
They say, oh my gosh, this
neurologically.
is so funny. Yes. So they're saying that no, we are the spirit guides.
Okay.
They're saying we are the ones who landed here. So they're just kind of like, that's why it's important to learn through us. And
Mm.
we are the frequency, especially dolphins. Like, think of it. That's how they communicate, is through frequency. They're
Sure.
like, we get to live in the physical form. They're like, it's very slippery. They keep on talking about being slippery, which they're
That makes
finding
sense.
very funny. They have a very weird sense of humor, to be honest. Like sometimes I'm like, what? But they they love the sensuality of, we are so we don't know the difference between being here and not being here. So they're like, we don't know the contrast, so they get
Hmm.
very excited that they get to be in body. So like things like saying, oh, they're dolphins are slippery and we get to be slippery, that's such a big deal to them, because they're just like, oh, you guys take it for granted because you just don't know the difference. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not like that. So
Sure.
yeah, so they're just like, they're very sensual, which is very interesting, because I think what happens is also the sensuality pulls them to earth, and it's almost like a slight reminder of maybe when they had an incarnation in a physical sense. They also
Hmm.
are showing that they don't necessarily have full incarnations. So this might be
Hmm.
also incarnations that they kind of I don't want to say this in a bad way, because it's not bad at all. They're kind of saying a hijack. So they maybe have lived through or with another being. So especially they're showing me children who leave early. They
Hmm.
are very much protected. So we have this thing of like, oh, they're not protected because they left early. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Meaning they crossed over early. And
Yeah.
they're saying that's not the case at all. They're saying we were here with them and we lived through this life with them because it was so short. So we were
Hmm.
almost like kind of like always on them. And so there might be a feeling like they keep on showing it almost in a physical way. So sometimes kids would have like a very specific lump or, a specific mole or birthmarks. That's what they're saying. They're just, okay, thank you. So they're saying like birthmarks, when kids have birthmarks, a lot of times birthmarks are actually a signature of what life they left
Hmm.
previously. So maybe they got hurt, like if you have a birthmark in the kidney, maybe they had something wrong with their kidneys, or they got knifed in the kidney or stuff like that. It's usually sometimes, and don't forget, it doesn't have to be a linear time. It could be, from Civil War or something of like on the head or whatever, that kind of stuff. But birthmarks are usually a signature of that. But they're keeping saying like they almost are a birthmark like that. So they're showing it in that way, that they were compatible of holding space for that child to live as long as they could in the physical form for that time. That's fascinating.
Yeah. The Washington Post had a great article. Maybe we even talked about this. I don't know if we did, though. I don't think we did. The Washington Post within the last 2 months, and it was talking about the phenomenon of kids generally under the age of 5 remembering parallel lives, to the point where they were able to go back, and it was something like 30% of these cases they were able to find information and confirm that who they're talking about. And it's interesting that the scientific community is now coming around, right, in certain ways. And so they're like, we don't know what it means. It could mean nothing. But I'm like, you just clearly stated that like this is a phenomenon that now science is able to like go back and like validate through, little kids knowing about things that they would never know about. Like they don't watch TV, they don't read books. How do they know these things? And so the idea of like that connection at a younger age, it to me makes sense, right? Like they are. So interesting, very interesting. Okay, I guess I'll try and stay on track because my brain is going all.
So like, is mine, and I feel like I have to write down what you're saying because I'm like want to be like, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here.
Yeah. No, I'll keep us keep myself focused. I should say. I know. Just you have to come back for the next round because we have.
Right? This is our teaser.
I have some really good questions now. And I have my notebook. I've been writing them down as we're going.
Good, because I'm bad at that.
Yeah, no. So we talked about angels. We talked about spirit guides. The follow-up question I have about spirit guides: do we have one at a time, or do we have? That's for a clarity thing. Or do we have multiple at the same time? Because you said they kind of switch in and out. Do they fill in for each other, or at the various period of their times?
So that's a really good question. They're saying multiple, but again, our problems aren't linear. That's what they're saying. Right. So it's just kind of like our suffering is linear, you know what I'm saying? But they're saying our problems aren't necessarily linear, which is really interesting that they're saying it this way. So they're saying they're kind of jumping, they're kind of like more as a resolution to our problem, or more helping that. So like, for instance, one of my spirit guides that came are tied to my head injury. Like she really came around that head injury time. She's the main one I use. I don't have my head injury any longer, but I actually suffer a lot still from my head injury, meaning I still have a lot of consequence, or I don't know, whatever relations to that. So I feel like she'll always be there. You know what I'm saying? But then there's other ones that help with other more stuff. But I actually don't know them. I actually only have one main one. That's very rare. Most people have multiple ones, but they say it's to the problem, or not the problem, how we see it as a problem, more to the situation or the environment versus on a linear. So then other ones step in that are more like, hey, I really could help. Joe's dealing with something else on what you're dealing with. I'm really going to help, that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And it's always interesting to me also of how they choose names. Sometimes like my spirit guides that I found, or the main one that I work with, she has a very simple name. And that's why I was like, I'm not getting this. I must get it wrong. I didn't get it. And then because I was like, a Native American, I expect to have a luxury name,
right.
It should be amazing, not like this honestly white American name, but I got. And I ended up seeing a psychic who I just love the psychic. She was like so pure and amazing. And she did a lot of angelic also. And she came in and she was like, okay, and we have your spirit guide here. And she said her name. And I was like, I never told anyone her name. I got her name before, and I was like,
the ego must love that.
Yes, you validated that I am correct, but not right. I'm correct in that I'm getting this, I'm listening, hearing. So it was like that validation, was just so pure in that way.
Yeah,
so
that's really
they're
nice.
going to get their name because they want you to call on them. And this is actually really, which I'm glad we're talking about this, because this is probably the most important part out of, especially angels and spirit guides, and also loved ones who've departed. You have to ask. You cannot assume. You have to call them. That's why finding their name, trust whatever you get, even if it's just some white kid's name, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Use that, because they might change it. Who knows? Whatever you're getting is
I don't know if they get upset being like, yo, that's not my name, man. Like,
yeah, right.
You need to, you need to like listen a little bit better before I'm going to help you out. Like,
right. They have no, they don't judge us.
That's good.
No judgment.
Thank God.
We don't have any grades or passing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's it. They actually don't judge us. There's no like, you suck. Can I have another person? Like they're not. Because they're assigned. I keep on getting, they're assigned, but out of choice, but it's from our souls. It's not from our ego or our personality. We chose this on a higher level. Even our experiences, we chose to have some sort of this to happen, of the happenings, not literally, but for us to experience, like I always say, well, Byron Katie always says, suffering is of the mind, so I love that term. And so it's just kind of like what we experience, suffering is optional, so what we experience, they have a contract with us. And so they're going to be coming in at certain times. So the other thing is, when we want to access them and ask them to help, we have to ask. Nowadays, I don't have to ask because I'm constantly using them. There is no such thing as time. So they are like, can you imagine when you cross over how bored you must be when everyone's like, oh yeah, I remember that, Vanessa. I remember that EO. He was great, spectacular. And then you're like, dude, use me. Do you know what magic I could do? You know what I'm saying? I could really help you. And they're just like, oh, and it's just like, go through the grief, experience that grief might last your entire lifetime, but also simultaneously use the energies that are available to you. So when I'm walking down the stairs with a whole bunch of stuff in my hands, I call on all my spirit guides. I call on my whole spirit team. That's why I label it team. You all are here to help me. You know what I'm saying? If I have to fall, thank you so much for helping me grace my fall. You know what I'm saying? If I break my leg, thank you so much for caring for me that I'm down on the ground and thank gosh, I don't have to get up right now. So you're asking not for them to save you. You're asking for help in this. And it shows you that your will isn't the forefront. Your will isn't, I'm doing this. We are doing this. So when I walk down the stairs and I'm like, especially when it was icy, and I'm going to my freezer or something where I store my cookies so I don't eat them, so it's in my garage. I'm going down outside, usually in probably slippers where I'm going to totally slip and be like, okay, holding stuff or whatever. And I'm calling on my whole spirit team of saying, help me, help me, help me. So I'm asking, I'm not saying, I got this, I'm doing it. You ask for help. And it's not saying that you can't do it. It's saying it's better with more.
Okay.
It's better connected. It's better that my will isn't that, oh, I need to walk down this and I should not slip. I am now in the place of allowance of, if I'm going to slip, I'm going to love that too. I'm going to slip and slide and make it a ballerina move, as clumsy and awkward as it's going to be. I'm going to kiss that ground because that's maybe where I should be right now. I'm going to have no judgment. So asking is not surrendering your will to them. It's surrendering your will to openness, to availability, that you are now available for consciousness to work its magic. You know what I'm saying? And it's so much better than what we have planned.
I love that what you just said, opening myself or surrendering myself to like the possibility. Yeah, it's great. Here's a simple question that I think I know the answer, but do you have to say it out? Do you have to ask out loud, or can you do it in your head?
You do it in your head. So you could do either or. I always do it in my head because I look like I'm talking to no one. So I don't
I talk to myself a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. asking out loud is really good. It's very powerful. So if you can do it when you're in your house all alone, like nobody's around, so you have
Yeah.
no like embarrassment.
Yeah.
I have done this and it moves mountains. I
Mm.
have done it of where it's kind of like having your own pep talk of being like, I am amazing. When you just like really, when you need it, when you need to like reframe your mind and you're just like, I feel like utter crap. I don't feel good about the situation. And then like, there's times when I do it, especially in my car, because it's
Yeah.
and I could really like really voice it. And especially if you have music, it's actually better because you don't hear yourself as much.
Sure.
I'd like slam the steering wheel, be like, I fucking, and just like really get it into my psyche,
Mm-hmm.
bypassing all my boundaries. You know what I'm saying? So I
Mm-hmm.
really have to like vocalize it. Or you are amazing. You are all my spirit team. I love you so much. And you'll probably start crying. You know what I'm saying? Because you'll feel it. So you feel that visceral.
Mm.
So those are great. The majority of the time, I'm just asking in my head. So I'm just like, because that's where the communication happens. It doesn't happen necessarily in the ears. And a lot of people think, oh, it's like, I have to hear something. Intuition is like hearing. I'm like, I don't hear jack. Like I hear
Mm.
maybe like 2% of the time
Oh
I will
wow.
get
Not like
literal
that.
voices, but
Yeah.
no, I get it as a
Mm.
visual. And again, everybody's different. Some people really will get it through the ears. It's actually pretty rare. People
Yeah.
really don't. That's not a very common thing. And it doesn't make it better or worse. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's just that when you're getting information, it's like I always say, it's the thought before the thinking. So we don't want to make it into a story. We just want to like get it right before. So when people are like, okay, I'm going to think about intuition and I'm going to be quiet. No, what were you thinking while you were forming that question? That, it
Mm.
just comes before you think about it, that kind of stuff. So, and it comes as a thought. So when you're asking, it's in the thought process. And then we think, well, I'm thinking that. I don't know. That's why I need you. That's why I need
Yeah.
people to ask questions because I'm not thinking of that. Because as soon as
Mm.
we're thinking of the question, it's like thinking of the answer. You know what I'm saying? And so when
Mm.
somebody else, so it's really good to write it down. It's really
Yeah.
good. That's why oracles and tarot and those types of divination are really good because it takes it out of the mind. You're waiting for an answer. You're not
Yeah.
thinking of an answer. It's being presented to you. It's the medium itself. So
Mm.
that's why. So when you ask,
Interesting.
you're
Yeah.
not asking for an answer. You're asking for clarity, which could come just as a thought, or it could come as it just forms in front of you. You're asking for help. It's like asking for, like when people, let's say a Christian person, they're praying to Jesus, they're just praying. They're in the place of pure, I can't do this myself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the allowance, the opening of the will and the saying, I need help. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm doing when I'm walking down those stairs.
Mm.
I'm activating my spirit team, which is my intuitive intelligence to awaken. And that's it. That's the answer, And so there's no, and how it shows up physically. Great. I got down and got my cookies, from the freezer.
There
So
you go. And
yeah.
like a tangential question to that is, and it's maybe a misunderstanding on my part, perhaps, on how it all works, because a lot of this is new to me. But from
It's new to me too.
okay, good. So
Always.
we have spirit guides. Other people have spirit guides. People close to us, let's say, we want them to. We want things for them. We want them to have clarity. We want them to, in a moment where they're in a bind, can we
Yeah.
ask our spirit guides to help them out? Or can we ask our spirit guides to talk to their spirit guides? Or can we talk to their spirit guides? And I just
Okay.
threw a lot at you.
I love this. No, I think this is such a great question. But it is, again, it's our mentality of thinking
Yeah.
that it's time, it's because we're putting time in there. So when
Uh,
time separates everything, so time is, I am here, you are there. You know what I'm saying? Or I am
mm-hmm.
me and you are you.
Right.
So it separates that. They're saying it's just consciousness. So
Mm,
when you're asking, you're actually asking a collection. So I think how
okay.
they're showing it is like, when you get it, when my clients get a reading and I'm asking the information, and then they're like, why are you bringing in my neighbor who I never barely even met? I was 2 years old. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry. And the reason why that neighbor, let's say, is coming in, because they have a message to help link something else, and it has nothing to do necessarily with the neighbor. It just has to do with they are bringing in information. So when you're asking your spirit team, which is the collection of their spirit team, of everybody's spirit team, of the wholeness. That's why I call it consciousness, because it's not just one, it's everything. And it's not, it's one in all, so all is,
that makes
that
sense.
kind of thing. And so it's like, that's where the information is coming from. So I don't separate it in my mind. I used to, but, and I almost felt guilty about that, because meaning like, I felt like I should know, you know what I'm saying? Again, that's such a rookie in that part of the, I should know, like, oh, who is this coming? I'm like, oh, but I don't know. That kind of stuff. And then I realized, oh my God, it's all one and the same. So there's no dividing line. Yeah. Awesome. So when you're asking, that's why I was saying a while ago about the Buddhas and the Jesuses and all those types of beings, it's all the same. There's no separation, even if what we believe in. So that's the beautiful part in it.
Yeah, I heard a saying in college that kind of stuck with me, and it was that the truth is one, but the wise call it by many names. And I always love that because I have kind of like more of like, always as a younger person, had more of like kind of universalist kind of collective conscious kind of framework a little bit. And I got some of that from my mom as just like a possibility. And it always it just worked for me. And so that's how.
Can you say it one more time?
The truth is one, but the wise call it by many names. So it's the idea that like no one has a monopoly on the truth, right? I lived in the South, went to school, lovely people. There was a very aggressive form of evangelical Christianity that took me a while to understand how it worked. And a lot of it was social capital, and I get it. It's like there's some spirituality that's very real for these people, but it's also, it's a whole different culture that I was not part of growing up. And so that was, and it caused a lot of friction when I was in college, just because a lot of the kids I went to school with, that was part of their experience, and had a lot of really interesting conversations and had a lot of really kind of hard, big feelings. But that was one of the things that was when I heard that saying, and I thought that was good. And then,
it embraces all, and that there's no right, but that means there's also no wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like anybody could believe or choose anything, and it can change in every moment also. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times I think that we think that religion or any type of belief is that we have to stick to that. And it's just like the amount of stuff that, like, I almost was hesitant. I remember a long time ago, I used to be hesitant about saying stuff because I was like, it just changes. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about until I surrender knowing what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about, because the best part about this, all of this, maybe in 10 years right now, we're going to be so leveled up of consciousness or higher up in consciousness that we'll be like, oh, remember when?
Yeah, right.
And I love that. And I love that, because it doesn't mean that we're wrong. It just means all we know is from what we could understand. It's not that we should know more. It's just only what we can understand in our entire environment right now. It's just like in my NDE. I could not understand. I remember I couldn't bring back love. The love that I experienced in this NDE is near-death experience. And so I had two, and one of my main ones, when I literally died and I didn't go to heaven. I went to somewhere, and there's a YouTube video on it. If people want to watch it, I could try to link it if I get it together. But the thing is, in that video that I made, or in that experience, the love that I felt, my felt perception of love, when I came back to the body, I could not carry that knowingness and feelingness of love, because my body, which all bodies are too small. And who I literally was arguing with God. Like, I was like, there is no way I'm going to fit in that body. I was so angry, like angry. Yeah. Like, I was like, God, you are making a big mistake. I do not want to go back in that body. It's too small. It's too tiny. You are a jerk, for suggesting such a stupid thing. And so God just like whatever. And so I got sucked back in my body, could care less. And that coming back in my body, I remember feeling I was just in a state of, I can't even describe the love. It is not in the human context of descriptive words. The words can't even hold that vibration. And I remember it leaving. And I wasn't heartbroken. I was just grasping, like, no, don't leave. And I realized that I was experiencing myself, and that now to be in the body, I couldn't experience all of myself because this container couldn't hold it. My body would have to be the size of the planet to get an inkling of what I felt, of love, to be able to hold that. So the body couldn't hold that. And I think because there's contrast, and there, meaning somewhere else, whatever is not here, there doesn't have contrast because it doesn't need to know. It knows it on that. And so it didn't have contrast. And so therefore we are on all contrast, because if we're in body or matter, we're all contrast. That's all we know is contrast. And so it's like that. And so that's why I think that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as you were talking about your NDE, I realized, like, when I was a kid, I almost drowned. And I remember, like, when I was a kid, I don't know if this was before or after this happened, but I could watch myself play. I could see myself outside my body. I remember telling my mom, and she's like, no, that's not a thing.
Wait, like just normally?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I remember being able to, like, I remember, like, really being able to, like, it was funny because I could see, me and this kid were playing in the sand. I was, like, under the age of 5 because we moved to Virginia when I was about 5. Yeah. And I remember being able to see us playing and just thinking it was interesting that I could see. I was like, oh, that's really, like, like, artists try and do that all the time as they get older, being like trying to visualize that. But, like, I feel like I could regularly be playing and see myself playing. But that's kind of a weird aside. But yeah, when I was a little guy, we were swimming, and it was on the Sound. We lived on the Outer Banks, and it was on the Sound side of the Outer Banks. And so there was the ocean and then just this little bay. And there's a little bit of a drop. My mom was back at the car, and my dad was supposed to be watching us. He didn't have his glasses on. And I remember taking in some water, and then just this incredible sense of calm that kind of washed over me. And I remember looking up through the water and seeing the clouds and just being okay. And right about that time, my mom pulled me out of the water, and I'm sure I coughed up a gallon of seawater. But it was always one of those things that, like, I didn't go beyond that point, right? Like, there was, and so I don't know if that, like, also
I think you did.
my.
That is
Really?
that is the point. But we think that it should be heaven. We think that it should be something that calm. That's the point. You had an NDE. So a lot of people have, again, look on my NDE page. There's people arguing all over it of if it's real, if I had an NDE. And I'm like, oh my God, enough with the arguing. But that's why, because we are believed that, oh, well, we know what heaven is, or if there is a heaven, or what is there a heaven, or we want a reason, we want it written. You know what I'm saying? What you experienced is that. That's you leaving your body. That calmness, that's it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing, like, you don't, it's everything and nothing, like, you just, no contrast.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's obviously stuck with me. And definitely made death a little less scary as a kid, because it was like, well, drowning. I mean, people are like, oh, drowning seems like the worst. And I would be like, actually, it's not so bad. No one wants to hear that,
I did it.
Yeah, I was like, come on. I was like 5, grow up, drown, please.
Exactly.
Sorry, it's my dark humor. But yeah, it was, it was very odd. So, like, I don't, yeah, there's a lot of things that as we've been talking, and as you and I had a session, like I said, a few weeks ago. Obviously, a million things running through my mind, kind of playing back through my mind, um, and like my dog passing. I've realized I've been very, I don't want to use the word fortunate, but like a lot of people close to me haven't passed in my life.
Mhm.
I am like, my mom and dad are part of huge families. My cousins, they're all here. My aunts and uncles miraculously are all here. And so that was
That's
like
the
one of
same with mine. Yeah.
yeah, it's like,
There's a reason for that though, but keep going.
oh, really?
Yes, I'll tell you in a second. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was just saying like that when my grandmother passed and she was like 94, and like that felt fine. That like felt very natural. And I was very at peace with that, and I think she was too. But then
Yeah.
when Luna passed, it was much more wrenching, right? There was like felt like part of me was hollowed out and taken away, and I couldn't, because I hadn't had a lot of other death experiences of someone that felt so close to me.
Mhm.
I was at a loss for what to do, and I, you know, like I wanted to believe, like my sister, who is a very scientifically very grounded person who wants to see evidence to
Yes.
understand things, which is fine. That's her way. She was the one who said to me, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only transfer from one form to another. And then she was like, that was as spiritual as she could get, which was actually very helpful. That
I was gonna say it's super intuitive. Yes.
yeah, and it was a beautiful, it was well timed, it was perfect. And then right around that time you reached out to me, and it was like, so yeah, I don't know if like, timing, life, so much of life comes down to timing. And so it was like, it felt significant to have that experience, and then kind of where I was in my life and all that to kind of help, I think, start a new stage in my life, and
Yeah.
kind of who I was and how my,
Exactly. And
so
it's an opening. It's like
yeah,
those are all like the openings. Like I always call it like Pandora's box, but it really is like an opening of understanding like you're in another transformation. And they're also, to me, mini deaths. I really feel like we've lived, and
yeah,
not just like the drowning, which drowning is such a signal. So many kids do drown and have near death experiences. I did too, but like
yeah,
it's just like, and I think because it's energy, emotion, it's emotion, and water is always tied to that. And there's so
hmm,
much psychic phenomena happening with water. Like every day when I get
yeah,
downloads, it's through a shower. It's literally in my
mm.
shower, and I get all this information. And I'm like, I even like bought like these pad of paper that you could do a waterproof pad of paper,
Oh
so I
wow,
can
yeah,
write them, but I still can't like write. I'm like, I can't. It's all, experience.
yeah,
The reason for that, from what I've experienced, because I'm the
yeah,
same way. I'm like, how am I going to read people? Because like I realized a lot, especially in the beginning, all my clients were always their parents passed, always, and
mm.
it's usually they were young. It was like their parents passed and they were young. It wasn't like people who were like maybe in their 70s and their parents passed. It wasn't that. It was people
Yeah,
our age or
yeah,
even younger, definitely younger, and their parents passed at an early age. And
yeah,
that was just like a signature. And I'm like, why is this?
hmm.
Like, why is it? Because my parents are still living and everything's fine. And I have very close
Yeah,
people, everyone, like my grandmother also passed just recently at 94, it's just like, and she's like a wild child, but like, and it was hard, but, and
yeah,
and myself, we both of our dogs was named Luna, so it's just like, and she was my second dog that passed, and I haven't had a dog since, and it's been 10 years, something like that.
yeah,
So there's this whole like connection with it. But what I found is that the reason why, so I started getting all these people who their parents passed, and I'm like, why am I able to read this, but
mm,
I don't share it emotionally?
mm,
It's because emotion, remember when I was saying in the beginning where I'm like, oh, I could sometimes be very Aquarian in nature in that
mm-hmm,
delivery.
mm-hmm,
I am able to separate my emotions from the delivery of what's coming through. And sometimes it makes me look a little kind of cold, or like, and I'm not cold at all, but like it can
no,
appear that way
mm,
because I'm giving information without an emotional charge to it.
mm,
That is like the most direct. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? It's like, it's just because it doesn't have an opinion. It's just like that. when you have not a lot of people crossing over, it's going to be possibly your intuition. You're going to probably be more of a medium for other people because you're not going to relate emotionally. If you relate emotionally, because a lot of people think intuition is empathy, and it is like, no, it's so not. Actually, empathy clouds it. I usually say if you can separate it. So you're taking, so as a medium, I'm being able to read people because I'm not having a reaction. I'm just being able to get their parents on the line, you know, and just be like, okay, your mom's, you know, communicating. Did you have this happen? Da, 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 da. And they're like, oh my gosh, I totally did. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter that that happened. It's just saying this is her validation of how she's showing up, you know, because if she says just, I love you or stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, great. I want more, you know, I want to know that your mom, you know, or stuff like that. So that's why. So when you don't have a lot of people who in your personal field who have crossed over, you might actually be a really easy conduit to communicate with people who have had people cross over. So if you have friends, just be like, can I like maybe see if what's available? That. And what you're going to do. And they'll be like, I don't know. And just be like, okay, I'm just going to see if I could just like tap in. And so you're going to explore that. You have to do this with a person who really, really wants it, you know, because they're in a super vulnerable space. So I always suggest to like my viewers, please don't, intuition is for you. It's not to do for anybody else. If they come to you asking, then you do that, but you don't ever do it for somebody, no matter how much you think they need it. You know what I'm saying? Because that's still from the ego, no matter what. So like I always say, I'm like, don't quit your job, you know, like just wait till it comes to you that you can do nothing else but do readings or something like that, if you end up doing that. But it doesn't even matter. Like I always say, psychic, it's overrated, you know, like just like intuition is for you. It has nothing to do with a job. I cannot wait till I don't ever have to do my job. I really am. This is why I do this, why I try to teach this, because I don't want to do this job. I don't believe it really is a job. I believe it's a practice and we have to exercise it. And we are getting really slow metabolism and exercising, you know, so it's just like we just have to really like re-engage ourselves to activate. So I would definitely explore that because it sounds like you're probably a conduit and you don't know it yet.
I don't,
of when you're being around people, of them opening up and saying, this person passed, I'm really having trouble. Now, here's the thing, you can relate because you're like, my Luna died. I know how much that hurts. I know. But now
few people like having their parents compared to dogs, though, I've come to find.
And this is the thing. I have to talk about this all the time. And I have to be like, sorry, I'm apologizing. I'm comparing my dogs to your children, but my dogs are my children. Literally, I can tell you that. So it's just like, I have to constantly apologize. But that's the thing. You're sharing because you're not sharing it. You're sharing it in an empathetic, but you're able to be detached. You have to be detached to be a conduit. Okay. So you are being used in the energetic sorcery, you know, of that. And you're being summoned because you don't want to be. That's the best part. This is how it works. You don't want to be. You don't have no interest. You're like, nope, someone else's job. Welcome to your job now. So that's how intuition works. It has no interest in the ego. A lot of people are like, oh, I want to be psychic. I want to make money. Da, 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 da. I'm like, oh my God, I have a whole scope that I would love to talk to you about that. But why it's showing up in your world. So pay attention. You're going to probably be, and you probably already are, around people who are losing people. Pay attention to who it is. Are they just parents? Are they just friends? It probably won't be technically their animals that they're losing. It might be to get you in, you know, you're not helping them. You're sitting with them. Okay. And that's the big difference. So just like when I say, oh, we're rising our vibration, their spirit team, the entire spirit team is lowering theirs. We're sitting with them in that stream of consciousness. That's it. We're just messengers of like, whatever's coming through, I will offer you. But where I'm really going to offer you is sitting with you The best gift that we could ever give each other and humanity is not to fix or correct or even heal or hope or even honestly pray, but to sit with them in the space of, I'm here. I might not understand, but I'm willing to hear and understand. You know what I'm saying? And that the people who have done that for me in my life, and it's just like, and same, I would guess for you in your life, of when you're really struggling and saying, it's not, I got you, it's, I'm here with you. That you're, and even as a silence, I'm here with you and I will be silent, and you can talk, or you could be in silence too.
Yeah.
That knowing, it's like having your spirit guide work through that person, but it's in physical form. It's like bringing your entire spirit team access into the physicality. And that's it. And that's why I feel like all of this is so important, to understand that we are not as independent as we think we are, and that we don't just need each other. We need to understand we are the whole, you know, that nothing, we cannot experience the joys without the lows. You know, we cannot experience life itself without duality, without contrast. We cannot understand it. So it's bringing that love, that what we experience, that calmness from the NDE, from the transition beyond the limitation, and bringing it into the fruition of the physical in whatever shows up. And that's, I think, our greatest offering. And what angels, I feel like the angels right now, they're applauding it. So we are getting it, you know, being able to understand why we're here.
And why we're here. I feel like that is a great subject for maybe another session.
Yeah, we should definitely do that.
Because I think I have a lot, like I have a whole list of questions about death and existence in this realm, this level, this whatever the proper term is for it.
Me too.
And so, you know, I feel like we've covered a lot of great ground on spirit guides, our spirit team, obviously intuition. I feel like
and our loved ones. The other thing that I just wanted to seal up with our loved ones. Our loved ones, when I'm reading, or when we all are reading, when we're getting information, that information, like a lot of times I always say, I don't know who's here and who's there, because I literally to me there's no difference, you know. But there's obviously a difference, but that the information coming through doesn't feel like a difference. And so when I'm reading a loved one, I mostly tell if they're crossed over or not. But what we're doing is we're reading energy. So we're reading, it's like a thought. It's like the feeling. It's like all thought and feeling like combined. And so it's just like all we're doing. So when you have your angels at this very high frequency, you have your spirit guides, which kind of mesh like the physicality, the earth realm with the spirit realm. And so you're really able to like connect with them. And then your loved ones, you know, there is no such thing as time. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, my mom crossed over, and like, well, I don't want to keep on bugging her. Bug her. There's no such thing as time. Can you imagine like when you're on the other side and be like, oh God, can they please connect with me? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the more you connect, again, you have to ask. You can't just hope or wish. You have to ask. So just like, and it starts with literally, Mom, I need you to show up. I need help. I need da da da. Now, one of the best things is do this when they're alive, when they're in body. Okay, start this now. Don't wait till they're crossed over. If they're crossed over, okay, that's fine. You actually have more access to them, honestly, when they're crossed over, because when they're in body, they're busy. You know what I'm saying? So they're not paying attention. But I do this with my kids all the time, and my husband. I do this with my kids, especially all the time. My son answers the phone like that. He will call. He's called me because his phone was dead, just like that, from a library phone. They still pay phones here.
Oh, so wow. Amazing.
Right? Exactly. So it's like those types of things. And I'm just like, oh my God. And he's super, super psychic. He's 9. So he's super psychic. But those types of things, I didn't ask him to call me. I was just like talking to him as if he's calling me. And so then all of a sudden he calls. So we're activating that. And so what happens is that when we get to do that, if we get to do that here before they cross over, that's phenomenal. but you're not literally doing it. You're not doing anything. You're connecting, you're accessing that intuition. Now, when they cross over, you're already established that. A lot of times people are now beginning that relationship of establishment. So it's going to take a lot of practice. And so they're going to need validation. And in my course that I teach you how to get validation and that kind of stuff. But you do need validation, you know, in a human way. But the sense of doing it, I really believe that we have to communicate with each other. And I do this with my friends all the time. I call it telepathy texting. So telepathy texting is literally, I'm like, I was just about to text you. And they're like, so was I. And then we're like talking about something. I'm like, I was just about to talk about that. They're like, so was I, you know, that kind of thing. And so your practice, and it's not like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. It's, of course, let's practice. Let's just keep on practicing. It's not even like I'm telling them we need to practice this. I just practice and just do it. So I talk in my mind before I text them, and then it shows up.
No, it happens. It's eerie, right? I mean, no, it's eerie when you're not expecting it.
Yeah, you think like Google or something is listening to you.
Right. Yeah. And there'll be times where I'll literally pick up my phone because I'm like, I think my sister's about to give me a call. Right. Now, there are some cues, like she's probably coming back from work at these times. So there's the parts I can like kind of, but there's times where like
energy using itself. That's energy validating itself. So you want that. You don't want to dismiss that. So it's literal and esoteric. It's both. It has to show up physically. So you want those, well, the chances are higher. Good. Use those chances that are higher.
That's interesting. Yeah, my good friend of mine, he and his family, I think they're all pretty psychic, but they would just practice meeting each other without making plans. So like, we're going to be at this place, like we're going to be at a park, let's meet each other. And then they would just intuitively figure out, and they would find each other, you know. And actually there was this story, and I know I'm going to mess it up, but I heard it a long time ago. It was from someone read a book about the Aboriginal people in Australia and how they would go on great walks to get from point A to point B, and they would just know where the other person was going to be, and they were connected. And someone asked them, how do you do this, you know? And one of the things they said was, you don't keep secrets from each other, because keeping that secret it puts up a block between you and that other person. So the people that you have fewer secrets with, or none, you're able to have that connection because you're not on guard. You're not guarding that there's no fear of them knowing something. So you can give them the knowledge.
And a secret is trying to be right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's what I keep on getting. Like, a secret is trying to be right. So because it's feeding the ego.
Yeah.
So the secret is kind of like also like, oh, I want to win. I want to know. I want to know where they are. You know what I'm saying? I want to kind of almost beat them to be like, oh, I saw you first, kind of thing. In our heads.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I like that. I mean, I like that because it's like, I'm like, it's interesting.
Like, I mean, shouldn't we be doing, because it's interesting, like especially, so I'm here in Haines, Alaska, and I live in Vero Beach, Florida, and also live in Haines, Alaska in the summers. And we do that because we're such an isolated small town. I mean, like, we're just surrounded by Canadian wilderness. There's nothing. For 5 hours, you have to go into a different country to get somewhere to or else you have to go on the ferry. Yeah. So it's like very, very isolated. And there's just like, we don't even have a stoplight. So we live in basically a 3 mile, I'm out farther, but it's just kind of like town is like maybe 3 miles, maybe of just like the circular where it buzzes. And literally this is what we practice, like, but not like purposely practice. We just practice this because we are so, it's like, you know, they always say like all women get their cycles at the same time.
Right.
We're even beyond that. Like, we're just kind of like, who cares about the site? Like, it's just like, it's just this like constant thing, but it's so natural. Like, it's just like, you don't even, so you're going to have in urban where you're not in this situation, you're going to have to practice that on a more daily basis, probably, that it's not as easy. So a lot of people, like, I feel like, especially with intuition, they think if I'm wrong or if it's not easy, it's not right. And it's just like, I think that it's a not just an unlearning, but it's an actual practice. And we just have to revisit it 1,000 times a day and just practice it, just like what you're saying, of like what your friend said, or what your friend was talking about, the story of the Aboriginal people, of meeting, of like, maybe that's what you're going to have to do with your friends. I mean, it's so much fun. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right.
Like, see what
Absolutely.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely love this.
Yeah. No, the same friend of mine, he and I went canoeing once, and we were just canoeing in silence for probably about 35 minutes. And then had a song in my head, and he started singing the song out loud at the exact same verse at the exact same moment. And I was like,
Oh my
and
God.
and I was like, man, you got to get out of my head, jokingly, of course. And but yeah, there's these moments, right? Like, that's part of my journey, right? Like, I can't explain that. It happened. It absolutely happened. I didn't make it up. And science has not caught up to that yet, right? Like, that's how I view it. And
Exactly.
so
And it's
that is
not
one of
wrong.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just hasn't caught up. That's a
right.
perfect word.
So that's how I view a lot of things. It's just like, yes, and like, sure, like, what could this mean? Like, I'm curious, I'm interested, and I love talking with people who are also curious or interested, or have, like, some insight or some experience that I can learn from. So that's why this podcast is very exciting to me.
Me too.
And
It's the
yeah,
openness. It's
yeah,
like the availability to not know and just see what shows up.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just I love that. And I love when I meet people like you that
yeah.
are just right there. And I love when people don't have answers, because I don't have
Hmm.
answers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I love, because there's so many answers. There's not just one. That's
yeah.
the best part, and
And
it just,
I
yeah.
find some that really reassuring, that there are not, and I think that's one of the things. I talked to someone who is in education, in higher education, I said their PhD now, and we were just talking about kind of where we are as a society and how we think. And one thing that shifted, and that was after, I guess, we were out of high school. It was kind of the like, no child left behind, tests, teach to the test. So what that means is there's a right and a wrong answer, and that gray area, which is really the interesting area, had to be removed for that to work. And that is a mindset that some people get trapped in, right? And I think that's why I talk to some younger people, like, we're talking like teenagers
Yeah.
and like that, and who have so much. We all have anxiety, right? But they have so much anxiety because they're afraid of doing it wrong.
100%.
But
Yeah.
and like, I saw something, a meme recently, be like, don't be afraid to be new at something. And it's like, for me, that's that exploration. Like, there was John Cleese, who was part of Monty Python, hilarious man, absolutely, and I think has a wonderful energy about him. And he was giving some talk about what is creativity, what is creativity, and it was someone who was maybe an architect or a designer, and people are like, you're very creative, and he's like, I'm not actually creative, more creative than anyone else. What it is people who are deemed creative can get their minds into a place where they are open and have fun. And so essentially, they described it as a being in a position of, or like a situation of play, like the idea of play, right? We let go of that. That's for children. But as adults, or older people, or young adults, if you allow your mind to be curious and play with something, because there's no wrong answers in play, right? There's nothing wrong in playing make believe or what if, or, and that's where art gets interesting, is when you have time and the space to play with a concept. And I think
Yeah.
that's in the more physical realm. When people do iterations, like a series of work, you can see that evolution because they're playing. They're allowing their brain to just say, okay, yes, sure, and maybe this, yeah, maybe not, and not worrying about being wrong, right? And I think so that
That's how,
curiosity
yeah.
is so important, and the
And that's
freedom
how
to
I
just
got,
figure it out.
yeah. And that's how I got intuition. I thought I was
Yeah.
making it up. I thought what I did, I thought I was like totally making it up. I'm like, I'm such a fraud. Like, here I have
Yeah.
people telling psychics are frauds. Da, da. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a fraud. Like, this is
Right.
just coming out of, like, it feels like a story. It feels like um uh just like I'm making up a story. That's how
Mm.
it started. And then I started paying attention to the story. I was like, but it was hard because it was only to me. And I'm like, why are there like, I used to have Asian women sewing in my house, and there was these imaginary stairs, and I don't know why. And I'm like, what's happening? And I'm just kind of like, and then over time, I realized, oh my gosh, I was tapping into another frequency that was in this space. You know what I'm saying? At a total time. But like those things are like when I get intuition, it feels like I'm making it up. It feels like I'm lying almost, or like I'm storytelling. That's what it feels like. And I had to chuck all those beliefs of that I'm stupid, or this isn't right, or oh my God, I'm going to look like such a moron to this person because it's live,
Right.
or whatever, and it was just kind of like, I just had to just, okay, and just, bleh, and that, bleh, it's like, it's your calm, like what you experienced in that NDE. It's this fluid, like feeling of just, I have to say this. I don't know why it doesn't make sense. I just have to say this, and I'm like, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And so I think like everything, I think we're going to be surprised of how intuitive we actually are, and that we've been using it all this time. We just don't know it. It's kind of like taking like us going underwater and then all of a sudden realizing we actually can breathe. Like I was convinced when I was a child that I actually could breathe underwater. Like just convinced. Like I was just like, all I have to do is stay here a little longer and then I'm going to be able to breathe. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's just like that, like of what you're saying. It's just, we're awakening to this. So we're not achieving it or getting it. We're awakening to it. And I think that's kind of like the wholeness of what we've been talking about here.